Marshall, and today I am so pleased to welcome the fantastic Steph Douglas, who is founder of Don't Buy Her Flowers and a mummy, a business she almost started 10 years ago now after receiving a whopping 8 well-meant bouquets following the birth of her first baby and realizing what a terrible gift flowers are for new mums. Don't Buy Her Flowers gifts allow customers to assert thoughtfulness and a human connection, often at a time it's needed and they can't be there in person. Steph regularly writes and speaks about starting and running a business and motherhood, and often a combination of both. She is passionate about equality at home and the massive implications the lack of it has on everyone, not just women. Hi, Steph. Thank you so much for
Hello.
coming.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I think you must be the person I've got on the podcast who's got the longest running business so far.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so it'll be in 9 years in November.
Oh, wow. That must feel like a huge, like coming up to next year, just feel like such a milestone for you getting this
Yeah,
far.
I think when you're running a business, some of the milestones you kind of don't almost notice, or you don't really go, oh, right, that's impressive, or that's like, well done. You don't pause to congratulate yourself, do you? And actually, yeah, recently talking to lots of people about investment and stuff, and they're like, wow, you've managed to keep it going for that long. That's impressive. So that's quite interesting that often businesses don't last that long.
Yeah, I think it's 5 years or so. If they're going 5 years, that's really good.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
like that. I love hearing about how, obviously with this podcast, how mums who started their business, the career path that led to it. So tell us a little bit about your life and career before Don't Buy Her Flowers.
Yeah, so I always wanted to work. I didn't travel, I didn't have like a gap year or anything like that. I kind of went straight from A levels uni and get straight into a job which I'd started doing in my third year at uni. I started doing a bit of press office work. It was basically clipping bits of paper for a government communications agency. And I just wanted to be independent and earn money. I think, like, even when I was 15, I had 3 jobs. So I'd be cleaning, stacking shelves, working as a waitress. I was doing all at the same time. And actually, one of my team is a really good friend of mine, and she used to do those jobs with me. So we both grafted. But yeah, my first, I did history at uni, and then my first work was in PR and communications. And then I kind of evolved to sort of integrated communications and marketing. So took the PR bit, but also looking at working across lots of agencies, like pulling them all together and trying to get them to work into one coherent campaign. And that's kind of what my passion was, really. So we do the PR, the ads, the website, the employee engagement, like having everything pulled together so that it's working as one. So I did that in government communications, and I did that for EDF Energy, and I worked at the health service. So lots of kind of big corporate-ish kind of jobs, really.
I love that. And I think it shows your work ethic, like being 15 and juggling like 3 jobs and obviously school. It kind of was setting yourself up for your future, basically. So
Yeah, without
so
realizing it, but it really
yeah.
was just to earn money so that we could go out on a Friday and a Saturday night, because that's what we used to do. So
Yeah. No, we've all been there. So you came up with the idea after your first baby, it sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah.
When did you actually start the business, and how did you actually like go about starting, like finding how you were going to get this idea into fruition?
Yeah, so the idea was, so 2010 my first baby was born. And it was the whole thing was a complete shock to me, like how hard it was, how overwhelming it was, how different I felt. I've kind of felt like I lost myself for a while, which I think is really normal and most women do. And so yeah, and just how hard it was, and then all these flowers arriving, and I was just like, this just doesn't make sense. I just had never given it a thought until that point, when I'm sitting on the sofa. Everything just felt really overwhelming, and it sore and angry at my husband and all this stuff going on. And then yeah, bouquets kept arriving. So that was in 2010. And then I was like lots of people, I suppose, when I was having babies, and all my friends are getting married and having babies, a lot of them at the same time. So it was kind of, we're all in that same boat, but I think we were one of the first of our London mates. So then I would put something together for them, and it'd just be like, or send something in a jiffy bag, or leave a lasagna on the doorstep, and just was a bit more thoughtful. But their response was so disproportionate for what the effort that was going in, or the cost, what I was spending, to how grateful they were, or the emotion that they, you know, their messages were full of emotion of like, oh, this is the first thing that was actually about me. I'm finding this really hard, because also I would include a note that says, you know, it's going to be okay, you're doing really well, like encouragement that I suppose I recognized that I needed. And I had a couple of friends who really, I remember like one messaging me, I was still in the hospital, Buster was born 4 weeks early, my husband had just finished cancer treatment, so that was just another thing to kind of add into that loop. But I was added to the overwhelm, I guess. But she sent me a message saying, just in case you're finding like the breastfeeding a bit tricky, like it is, and I found it really hard, and give yourself time, and just that kind of encouragement and people relating to you rather than just going, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you, which it is, and you know that, and you're feeling that, but at the same time you might be feeling really overwhelmed. So that was kind of the core of the idea, that thoughtfulness, that reaching out to someone when they might be feeling all of the emotions that we know that they feel. And then I had a year off on maternity leave, went back to work, pretty much pregnant. So then I worked another 9 months, and then was off having a second baby, which is my daughter Mabel. And just in that whole time, it was just people having babies, and me also starting, because I'm a talker, I would say to my NCT group, is anyone else feeling like really angry, or is anyone else feeling all these different things? So I think the idea for Don't Buy Her Flowers was there, and then the circumstances kind of were right, that I could see that there was something in this. And then I went back to work after Mabel, and I started writing a blog, which was like a stepping stone, because I'd never thought I was entrepreneurial. I never wanted particularly to have my own business, and I was working 3 days a week, which in theory is a good balance, managing to stay in my job. I don't think there was probably particularly high level of job satisfaction, and just I think it's hopefully changed a bit now, but like the comments of, oh, well, you're a part-timer and you're overlooked for lots of things, even though I knew I was smart and hardworking. But yeah, it's a funny period, that I think when you first go back, and one that most businesses aren't very good at recognizing. I know you're better at that than many. Like that kind of new starters, people leaving, all that stuff, people are hopefully getting better at it. But anyway,
yeah, I still think there's a way to go. It's kind of, it's down to businesses to be like that. And if they're more money focused or something like that, they're not going to be,
No, and when I went back after Mabel, I actually like crossed my boss at the time on the stairs, and he didn't really say anything. He was like, hi, and that was kind of it. And maybe he wasn't quite there, but no, there wasn't like a, guys, Steph's back. And not as in I wanted a fanfare, but in the same way that I would when we had someone come back to Don't Buy Her Flowers who'd been on maternity. We sent her a package, we made a fuss of her when she came back, we made sure her desk was tidy, like just acknowledge it, make sure everyone knows that person's coming back. And I think if you're in a big company, it's really easy for people not to, but it would be really easy for them to make that transition just a bit better by acknowledging that, oh yeah, you've not been here for a year, let's see what, or 6 months or whatever. But yeah, and then so actually when I started the business, which was about 9 months after or 8 months after I started the blog, and that went really well and gave me that confidence, I think, and that knowledge that, right, there's loads of people who found this like I did, which means the idea of the business works. That people would appreciate something a bit more thoughtful, because at the beginning we were just gifts for new mums. And so I started, so the kids were 3 and 4. Yeah. Oh no, 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, but the eldest was about to turn 4, so they're pretty much 2 and 4. So in the thick of it. So I don't really know what, but then I wasn't packing thousands of boxes. It was in my house. I could pack around, like it was hard work, but it was also quite exciting. So
you're passionate
that kind of
about
helps.
it.
Yeah, definitely. And I could work it. You can flex it. I think it's quite easy to forget that you can flex it around, your family and sports days and all that stuff when you have your own business, which is a benefit. It's just how you keep that balance as it gets bigger. I think that's quite a challenge.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because I'm talking about balance as you get bigger. I love that you brought in your brother-in-law and an old school friend to work on your business with you. Like, did that feel risky at all, bringing in people you knew to like support you grow the business, or just make complete sense?
it felt quite natural. So my brother-in-law built the website, so he was involved for the first 6-7 years until we needed to build a new platform, and it was too big for one person to kind of manage, but he did a brilliant job. And then my brother we brought in to run the warehouse, so 2 years around the business from my house for 2 years, and then we moved it into a warehouse in Gloucestershire, and he took over kind of operations. So, and then two of my best mates, so one is head of customer services and the other is manages the warehouse and does accounts and stuff. So but like I think lots of people are quite nervy of working, and I think you have to know what the personalities involved are and whether they're going to be okay with you being the boss, but also are you going to be okay with them. You've got to have had some of those slightly awkward conversations, and it takes a little while to get used to, but when it's difficult, like when COVID happened and suddenly we were inundated and it was a case of, right, we're going to have to work really, really hard, and everyone's feeling really uncertain and all the stuff that was going on, they were amazing. And that was when I was really, I mean, I always knew that they were the right team, but that was when I was like, right, these guys are in it with me. And now business is hard, like retail is hard at the moment. And so having people who are in it and, want to make it work is really key, really key.
So, and speaking of COVID, because obviously you had an established business by the time COVID hit, and then 3 kids at home. Like how did that, like, especially with the fact it did involve, were you in a fulfillment center at this point? Like it did involve getting gifts to people, and your business your revenue increased by 600%. Is that right?
Yeah. By the end
how do you manage that?
Well, yeah, it was hairy. it was such a weird time, because it was obviously, like, personally for everyone involved, you're all going, what the hell is this? Like, oh, you can't go out, you can't leave your house, but you can go out for 1 hour, you can't meet anyone, or you can meet them on a bench, but you've got to sit, like, almost remembering those rules. It's like, oh my god, that was bizarre. Like, and also awful. Like, lots of people were having a really tough time. Lots of businesses didn't survive. It depended very much on, we were so fortunate that we'd moved to a new warehouse just before, so we had a massive space that we were like, oh, we'll grow into this, thinking like we had a bit of time. And we were established. We didn't have to suddenly go online, which there were lots of businesses that had to kind of suddenly build that. But that volume, alongside trying to manage what everyone was going through personally, and keep them safe and space them out, and work no one knew what they were supposed to be doing in a pandemic. Like, how do you manage that? So it was really intense, and we learned a lot. But we were lucky because we were also really busy. So that kind of helped massively when that's happening. And now kind of everyone's like, well, we could do those numbers with our eyes shut, so like, bring it on. So now we've got, like, it's a different challenge. But I think that I think having people who were in it with me really helped, because it was emotional. Like, sometimes you go into work and just cry. All of us, everyone did at some point, because you missed your parents, or I don't know, like, you're struggling with the homeschooling, which was, horrific. So there was lots going on for everybody. And I think part of my job as the leader of that team was to recognize that, and give people the space to go, oh God, this is awful. Or like, one of my team, she's a single mum, she was trying to juggle customer services, and she's one of my best mates as well, to add to it. And we had to at one point say to her, look, this is too much for you to juggle this. And it was a really emotional conversation, because she wanted to do it, but I think there was some relief afterwards when it was like, look, we're still going to pay you, we'll find other stuff for you to do, but you can't manage this, like, customers calling up and people quite fraught at times, because it was that period. You can't do that and have your 2 children at home. Like, that's not fair for you, and it doesn't really work for the business either. But actually, genuinely, it was more about, you can't do this, and we could find a way to fix it. Like, we had other people that could do it, and it was fine, but it was tough. It was, everyone had to work differently, didn't they?
But like, really a credit to what you're building and the culture you're building, that you recognize that and wanted to have that awkward conversation, but everyone was better for it.
And she has said since, in fact, she sent me a gorgeous card. It's just like, it was right. It was the right decision. Like she's doing it now. She's back. She never went away, but it was just a shift in what people were doing to wake at work, because some
Yeah.
people were flexible and some people wanted to come in. I mean, majority of people wanted to escape home and come in, and we could. So we were lucky that we were some business that could stay running.
Yeah, absolutely. And post COVID, has this like time contributed to taking your business down a path of B2B gifting? I've spoken a bit about Upsource. Actually, my business, the virtual
Yeah.
assistant agency, uses you guys for our team gifts and maternity gifts and onboarding gifts. So have you has that time contributed to you kind of going down this route of businesses like mine using
Yeah.
Don't Buy Her Flowers?
Yeah, we saw a massive increase in B2B, especially at Christmas time. The first, so it would have been 2020 and 2021. So people couldn't have parties, and then they thought they could have parties, and the parties got cancelled. And so it was, I mean, we were having to turn away business, which is something that you never want to do, as you'd know, like you kind of, we'll make it work. But it was so busy, and like really big brands who were coming for gifts, and they wanted something more thoughtful. They wanted something put together. They didn't want to just send the usual hampers, and they wanted to put in a combination of, like, might be food and drink things, but it would also be kind of relaxing products or something that was a bit more thoughtful. But the kind of hybrid working model, and also I think people having to really think about retention and engaging employees and customers as well, that's not gone away. So that's a massive opportunity for the business, and we're having lots of really exciting conversations going on for kind of, with big and small. Like, we get 1 in 20 of our orders through the website is a B2B order, so that could be someone buying for someone on the team whose birthday it is, or it could be like it's a real mix, or it's big companies that come up because they obviously it's in the address and you can see where they're from. So that gives us this constant pipeline of potential B2B customers, which is awesome. And to be honest, prior to COVID, that was happening on a smaller scale, but we weren't really doing anything. We were like, oh great, because we saw ourselves as very much B2C business, and it's like, oh, that's lovely that's kind of happening. Whereas now you go, oh, that's another whole market that is also really dull. Like, a lot of corporate gifting is terrible, and it's not sustainable, and it's like big brands, not like, we work with lots of small and medium-sized businesses, so also kind of economically it's kind of more positive. Like, there's lots of stuff going on.
I laugh there because I think about the gifts my husband get, who works for a massive company, and like a massive gin glass with the company logo on. I'm like, oh, we're really going to use that?
Yeah, and it goes to the back of your cupboard. Well, same as the hamper, like the food and drink hampers that have stuff in it that's like a really random flavor, or it feels like a filler, you're like,
pickles.
Yeah, that nobody wants. So we've got food and drink hampers for Christmas 23 that we've worked on, but we've got a Cotswolds one because that's where we're based. And we've got in loads of samples and bought loads of like products from independent businesses, and have made sure that everything tastes really good and looks really good. And we're like, yeah, because you want to give it to somebody and that everything gets used. I don't want something sitting on the shelf like a year later and then they just chuck it in the bin. But I think, so that's what we kind of want to do slightly differently, I think.
Yeah, it makes complete sense with virtual teams, virtual working, but trying to still get that thoughtfulness across. Like you said, you can't just have that chit chat to the side with someone and learn that they like this flavor cake or something like that. It takes a real effort. We actually ask now the team to tick things about what they like, so we know who doesn't drink alcohol and things like that.
But that's great, because some businesses have that. Like, sometimes we'll have an order and it's like 300 packages, but they know there's 10 vegans, there's 3 gluten-free, there's like, and they know that information, whereas others will just go, we can't possibly know all of this information, so make them all the same. And it's really interesting, and it doesn't mean that it's just they don't have that information. And I guess the ones who do have really gone to think about it.
No, it's a really interesting point, because I'm the same. I just like, I don't want them just to get something and they're like, oh, here's my can of gin sat on the side because they don't drink gin. I'm saying that's why I don't drink gin. So,
yeah.
I'm always really I was also wanted to mention, because I saw something about how you support small businesses now move from packing orders in their home
Mhm.
to going to outsourcing their fulfillment. How does this look? Because this looks like a fantastic initiative.
Yeah, so we started doing it kind of accidentally, which I think is probably how lots of things happen, isn't it? But we were talking to somebody who has a business, and she sends out packages, and it's to do with dogs and dog behavior. And she was doing it for herself from her parents' garage. And it was like, we could do that, we could help you with that. But also, when you start having conversations with people who've been doing it in their spare room, it's two things. I think one, you realize with the kind of efficiencies that we've learned over the last 9 years that we can help people with, and whether that's like packaging efficiencies or costs or just doing things in a slightly better, smoother way, hopefully we can help advise, which they're looking for. But also the time that somebody is taking, if it's their business, the time that they're spending. And I know this from my own experience, that I used to pack all the boxes, and then I had people come in and pack it, but it was in my house. So I still would then, on a Saturday, if some orders had come in, I didn't have anyone booked to pack, I'd still be packing. I was never off that. But you cannot grow your business if you're in that kind of level of detail. Not really. You're going to get to a point, there's only so many hours in the day. And if you go, right, if you're paying someone 11, 12 pounds an hour to pack boxes, that is, what are you worth an hour? I think is the kind of question. It's probably very similar to your business, to be honest, where it's like, if people are spending all their time organizing things that you can do, and then they can focus on growth or sales or like all those other bits or new ideas, like, and that's what we're working with. And we've got a couple of clients, and then we've got a few in the pipeline as well who we're talking to. But it is really interesting because the some of them will say, well, I'll keep this bit of it because I want to quality check it or something like that. And you're like, you can, or we can do that for you. And actually that will properly, I think it's a nervousness that I totally understand, because I had it. Like, it was like, well, no one else is going to be able to do this. And I was lucky in a way because I retained it within the business. Like, we do our own fulfillment, so we're managing that whole process. So I wasn't giving it up as such, but it still was a big deal when it left my house and I wasn't involved in the day-to-day. But I think, yeah, it's quite an exciting element that we've kind of grown. And also it makes sense to us, like financially, it makes sense to keep the team busy. We've got the space, we know what we're doing. So it's a really good way to kind of create an additional revenue stream for us.
Yeah, that it works. It makes complete sense while helping others. It's additional revenue for you, like you said.
Yeah.
And it's so that phrase, what you're saying about, well, I'll give them this, but I'll just keep this bit. And it's those
Yeah.
just bits that kind of really hinder you from growing, because it's still, the mental load's still there of like,
Yeah.
I'll just ensure this is like tweaked perfectly, or this
Yeah.
email draft is perfect. And it really stops you from achieving that. I mean, I could preach about this all day long, running an outsourcing business, but it's
Yeah. But
so
it's
true.
interesting, isn't it? And you can see, and I think part of your job as well as mine is to kind of then coach people through that a bit, to reassure them, because they're not, I totally get it, but the idea is, well, but we can do that. And I think it helps that we do that for our own business. Like, the quality and the accuracy and all that stuff for Don't Buy Her Flowers is really key, and the customer service. So we will be able to do, it's the same people who'll be doing it for your business. So you kind of go, yeah, we can do that.
Oh,
And you can then
amazing.
focus on growing it.
Exactly. And you definitely have done that over the past almost 9 years now. And so you started this when you had you've got 3 children, right? You started it around when you had your first 2 were older. So how did it look? Do you mind me asking, how did it look? I'm really interested in maternity leave for business owners and how that
Yeah.
looked for them, since I took maternity leave 6 months after I launched AppSource. So
Wow.
I was a lot earlier on in my journey. So how did
Yeah.
that look for you with your, and how did it make things differ for your third child?
So so we were 3 years in when I had Frank, and I knew, because I think if it had been my first, I don't know what would have happened, but because it was my third, I already knew I needed to do it differently to the first 2, which was to get some help. And weirdly, I was in a car park and I was quite heavily pregnant, and the other 2 were running about. And this totally random lady, who, if I could track her down, I really would. But she was like, oh, she said, how are you gonna cope with the next one? And I was like, like, thought, things, but she wasn't being rich. She just was like, just my one word of advice, or my one bit of advice is, don't try and do everything. Don't Don't just heap on, get help, like get help, outsource what you can and get help, because 3 is a lot, or any new baby is a lot. And it was really interesting because I was like, oh, okay, well, I'd heard of doulas, and I was like, maybe. And I didn't want a doula for birth or anything. I was like, and I don't have, my parents aren't local, Doug's parents aren't locals, we haven't got family around, we haven't got that kind of, can you come over, I need someone to hold the baby help. And so yeah, I found this doula called Sophia, who is now a really good friend of mine, and she's got kids and they babysit for us, and that's just one of the most gorgeous people you'd ever meet. And she came over to the house, and I must have been about 7 or 8 months pregnant. And I was like, I think I want someone from about 7 weeks. I was like, the first few weeks, it was Christmas, and I was going to have the baby in November, and then it would be Christmas. So I was like, it's after that, I think that's when I'm going to really feel it, because I've done it twice. So I kind of remember that 6 week. And yeah, and she used to come 2 afternoons a week, and it changed everything. Like it massively helped. But in terms of the business, it also, I think I had that mindset of, I have to look after myself in this period. So I put some stuff in place. So as well as Sophia, I had hired a social media manager, which I'd been doing it all myself. And when I was pregnant, I was like, I am not going to be able to do that. If I want to stay sane, I'm not going to be able to do that. And so we had a social media manager who literally, she's still working with us kind of as a consultant, but she's just switching over after 6 years later, since she started when I was pregnant. And I think that's a key bit, if you can, to think about, rather than just thinking, I'll just keep going and I'll just pile it in. It's like, what could you outsource? What could you give out to someone else? Because actually I shouldn't have been doing the social media myself anyway, really. Like I know it's another cost, but it was like, well, actually she looked at it and went, right, this is what I think you need to do from a strategic point of view, which was better than what I was doing, which was just a broadcaster. I was just going, oh, and we've got a new package, oh, here's me doing something. And she looked at it really differently, which we needed. So yeah, I think, but I mean, it's still a juggle. And I also actually, Frank was the only one that I sorted a nursery place when I was still pregnant, and I didn't for the other two. I could take my time, but I think it was 2 days a week from when he was 7 months, which was young. I didn't have that with the others. I had a whole year off with the others. But I knew I couldn't just completely neglect the business, but I also knew that I couldn't just work and look after him at the same time. I felt like I needed that clear marker that those 2 days I could properly do it, and the rest of the time I then had him.
That's very true. It's very similar to mine. I was going to put him in 2 days a week from 9 months, and then my husband was like, he was like, you need to start this from August, because I can tell you need that clarity. And
did you feel massive relief when you had those 2 days? Yeah,
I had those 2 days, because they're in the same place at the time, so we had 2 full days, and they were both in the same nursery. And it was, so otherwise I was juggling, like using Bubble app, the babysitting one. Otherwise it was just kind of like our like maybe what you use your doula for a bit, but kind of just sneaking 2 hours off, and I wouldn't be far, so I could go back and feed him, if I needed. And it was relief, because it was like 2 whole days a week.
Yeah, which you could do a hell of a lot in 2 days. When you're juggling and you've got kids at home, you suddenly go, oh yeah, I could do. Yeah, definitely. And then I think, and we crept up till he was doing 4 days a week. And he always had a day. I always had my Frank Mondays until he went to school. Because I felt guilty, because the other two had only ever done 3 days at Oh no, my Mabel did 4 days at the end, but yeah, so it was like, oh, I feel bad to make it too different to what they had.
Oh no, I would do the set Wednesdays is my mummy day.
Yeah.
Second, you do that, and it's really interesting what you said. You knew you needed to take time for you. Like, it's so true, because you can't just pretend your business is going to carry on just fine after a third child. You know how they can just rock your world when they arrive. You don't know what that child's going to be like till they come.
Yeah. Oh, and are you going to get any sleep? And if you're not getting any sleep, how are you going to manage it? And I think, and the operationally, it was a good thing, because so we'd moved the business in like October 2016, and Frank was born a year later. So it meant that I still was quite involved in the day-to-day, like the operational stuff. I'd be checking stock, or I'd have a look. They didn't need me to, but it was quite hard to just let that go. But actually having a baby meant that it was like, right, this is happening without me. And sometimes it feels really unnatural, but also if you've hired the right people, you've got to trust that they are going to be able to do it. And if you're always hovering, I guess you're not giving them that autonomy to get on and do it themselves. So by the time I kind of came back, I suppose, and I was still always available, but when I probably came back, they definitely didn't need me operationally, like, and they all can pack quicker than me, and it's better than how I would do it now. You know, if I go down, I don't pack. I might help with shifting stock around and stuff, but if someone wants me to pack boxes, I'm like, oh god, I don't know how to do it, because it's all gift wrap and the ribbon and everything else, and I don't feel very good at it anymore.
That's good. You know where your strengths lie, but it's so
Yes,
good having
exactly.
that confidence, what you touched on, that confidence to let go, because I've definitely had those moments. I've got a manager who helps me with the team, and I'm like, oh god, they all like her more than me. They're all gonna, oh, she's like more involved and knows more about them than me. And it's like, well, that was the intention, Caroline. Why are you so
You've hired
worried?
the right person. That's great. I know,
Yeah.
it's a funny one, isn't it? And yeah, you have to check in and go, is any of this ego? Is this because I want to feel like I know this, or I'm involved in this, or
Yes, ego, exactly that. That's not the first time I've actually mentioned ego today. Sometimes you've got to be like, yeah, is that my ego and what's best for everyone and the business kind of thing? And
yeah,
reality is, yeah, you got to step away from some stuff if you've got the right people in place.
yeah, exactly.
Some feedback or like research I did for this podcast, like mums wanted to hear about real mums who don't have, like, you know, a team of staff at home, as in nannies and everything, and how they actually do it, and how, like, what their normal week looks like, kind of thing. What does your normal week look like with the kids and
I
things
mean, it's
now?
quite chaotic. I've just dropped one off this morning. She's gone on a 5-day residential. So I'm like, I'm down to two kids for 5 days, which feels really weird. It is quite chaotic. We both work full time. There's 3 kids. They've got all the usual clubs and everything else. We use wraparound care at school quite a bit, which again, you do that thing where you go, oh, is this okay? But actually, like at Frank's age, he loves it. He's quite happy to spend time with his mates. They feed them tea as well, like, you know, so then you're not having to fit that in, not every day, but on the days that he's doing that. And then I found with Buster, when he got to year 6, he's now in year 7, he didn't want to go to the after school clubs and everything anymore, but then he could come home and be here, and we were here, so that was fine. He could hang out or do his homework or whatever. But I think not, I at the beginning I really worried about that. It was like, but I didn't go to school, I just went to school from 9 till 3. How is this going to work? But 9 till 3 is a really short day to fit your work into. And so, and ours do, I mean, Frank does Italian, for God's sake, like they do clubs after school and activities and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, if that's what it takes for us to have this balance, so that hopefully I'm not working all weekend, or when I pick him up, it's me that's picking up, like we don't have nannies, it's Doug or I, you know, every time, because sometimes there'll be a bit of, oh, I don't want to do that, and I'm like, but how many of your mates have got grandparents or nanny or someone else picking them up? And I was like, you want us there, and this is kind of the balance that we're trying to create. So yeah, there's that. And I have a cleaner who, when she's like, if she's away or whatever, I'm completely screwed, and the house is a total wreck. And I think sometimes that's another one that people are embarrassed to say or shy away from saying that they've got. Or once I think I had someone saying, oh, get you know, you're not a woman of the people, you've got a cleaner. It's like, honestly, again, it comes down to what value of your time, of what can you fit into your week. I could just add more, but I wouldn't be able to do anything. Or if I did have the kids here and I was cleaning all day Saturday, like, well, how's that going to work?
Yeah. And
So
comments like that are really unhelpful. They're saying that to the wrong person. You're not there.
so
You've got
unhelpful.
people waiting on you. You've just got
No, geez,
you're
like,
providing work to someone else for a job you don't have
yeah,
time
and I'm
to
paying
do.
for it. It's not like someone I'm just like tied to the kitchen. Yeah, and I mean, I wrote about the rush hour. So I had a piece
Yeah.
on in Grazia, and oh god, I like, people are still sharing it now, and it's like a week and a half later. And the bit that I shared, the quote that I shared, was about saying that we're like a guinea pig generation, where, and the more I think about this, the more I think it's really true that we are trying to, we're working, more women are working in some capacity, whatever that is, or they're adding other things in, like they're caring for somebody, or, you know, whatever that is. But we're also still trying to uphold the systems that we grew up in, and the systems aren't really any better. So often it's still the mum who's on the WhatsApp group and gets the call that it's swimming day, or gets the message that it's spelling day, or it's cake sale. And I know more men are involved, and like Doug and I are working really hard to make that more balanced, but I think we have it in our heads that a lot of this stuff should be us, so we do it, and then we feel completely knackered and broken, and we can't work out why. And so when you get someone making a comment like that, it's just so unhelpful, especially when it's other women, because you're like, okay, if you've got a different setup to this, great. And I think that's the key bit, that there's a lot more individuality probably now, based on what you earn, based on if you've got family nearby who help out, or you don't have family, or what jobs you both do, and what you both earn. And there's all these other factors that come in, where it maybe used to be that the man generally earned and the woman didn't, or she didn't earn very much, and they were really set roles, and we've completely thrown them up in the air, but we're still kind of still trying to do them. So it's just really complicated, I think, for lots of people. And the response just tells me that if I'm saying that and someone's offended by that, well, they're probably in the minority, and that's great. If someone thinks they've got it good, great, carry on. Like, I don't want other people to feel bad, but I think for a lot of women, we're just really, really tired.
Yeah, definitely tired. We can all agree with that. And
Yeah.
like, thanks for the wraparound, because I can relate to the wraparound care thing as well. I'm try to only at the minute put my eldest in about once a week in wraparound care. But
Okay.
this week, because I'm going away, and so I'm trying to pack in work into 3 days, and
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
team reviews going on. He's in 3 days this week, and I was
Okay.
like, oh gosh, he's in 3 days this week. And my husband was like, he enjoys it.
Yeah, and if he doesn't, then that's a different conversation, isn't it? But I think,
Yeah.
again, it was my friends who've got I've got a group of friends back in Gloucestershire who had kids before me, and they've also they're really helpful for going, what's this about? And when Buster was starting school, and I was saying, I think what I'm going to do in the first term, I'm just going to do 1 day like wraparound care, and then I'll wait until day, the second term, and then maybe I'll add morning to the set. And they were like, Steph, you don't need to overcomplicate it. Go in and do what you need, that's going to work for him and it's going to work for you from the beginning, and see how that goes. And actually it just means the kids, if that's all they've known, so they're fine with it.
Yeah.
Like, and we're there. I'm always there. I'm always picking them up. I'm always there at drop off. I'm there when we forget wellies for welly walk, and I'm running them back in. Like, it's not like they're neglected.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, and you think, and that's the luxury of having a business in that sense, is that you can be there. Because I think some of us might be caring for previous generations. My mum was a single mum who was a nurse and wasn't there a lot of time, and I was fine, but it's still at the same time, it's like it's nice to be able to see, for me, I'm a little bit like, oh well, at least I can be there, maybe, kind of thing. So
yeah,
it's
and
interesting.
I think as they get older as well, then it's a different kind. Like, I've
Oh yes,
noticing
yeah.
with Buster and Mabel, they need my time. So it doesn't mean I need to be here all the time, but it means that at some point in the week, or I don't know, Mabel needs a shopping trip where she wants it to be just me and her, or Buster wants something and we go, like, equally, he wants to go to Westfield, him and his mates. So I took them and I take them for lunch, and like, they want time, they need time. And that's when stuff comes out. Like, you can't sit them down and go, how was your day, in the way that, well, you can't with most kids, I suppose, but I don't know, things come out as you're walking around, and as you're, when you're not expecting it. And I know that they need that from me, so that has to be a factor in whatever I'm doing now.
It's really good, helpful for me to see future years and how
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah,
be. Because I know it's a good conversation to have, because I know we've agreed. I think I heard on one of your podcasts, you were talking about the term, how do you do it? And it was like how people, at one point there was a real pushback on it, I felt, because like we weren't asking your husband how he does it, but then
yeah.
you were saying, if we're going to talk about the maternal load, the mental load that we take on, then it's a good question to have, is how are we managing, kind of thing, kind of relates
Well,
to the article you're talking about.
yeah, and I think by all means ask men, but what you'll probably find is that they're not juggling as much. Like, and if
Yeah.
they are, the ones that are, brilliant, because and they're finding it hard, probably because it is hard, because they're trying to have a better balance. Like, Doug really has changed, like since we first had children, and it's taken, well, our eldest is 12, so it's taken quite a while to get to that. But in terms of like what we're juggling and who's on the WhatsApps and all that stuff, we are sharing that more equally, and that makes his life harder. So yeah, ask men, but I think if the argument is that we shouldn't be asking women, that's like, you're completely missing the point, that they are still doing the majority. And it's not just like us saying that. All the research, and Fair Play, Eve Rodsky, who wrote Fair Play, is a good one to follow, which is all about the mental load and how you divide it in your house. But all the research basically says that this fundamental shift in women working has happened, but it hasn't seen the same fundamental shift in how we run the home.
Yeah. No, that's,
so it's not just me moaning about it.
No. I went to a talk recently and they'll talk about how, well, we've got to create this space for men in the home kind of thing, because my husband actually does all the cooking, and I've had, talking of unhelpful comments, in the past, like, someone called me a spoilt wife once, and
wow.
pre-kids, it was like, what do you do when he cooks? And I was like, well, I might be working or
yes,
working out or something.
I just sit back and smoke a cigar, like, what? Yeah, wait for my slippers.
I'm tidying up the mess he's made, because obviously he's had to learn how to be a tidier cook. But I was like, actually, I was really smart, because we know, like, with the roles in the home, cooking is his kind of thing. You know, that's one of the things we've got nailed. I've got nailed. He might disagree at some point.
No, but it's like Doug does the food shop, and sometimes he does it really badly, and I was moaning about it, and someone was like, well, you should be grateful he's doing it. It's like, why should I be grateful that a man who is 43 and is smart is capable of doing an online food shop? Like, we both should be. But whether he bothers to look in the cupboards and check everything's, and actually think about the week ahead and how many meals do we need, and is it a packed lunch day, all that stuff, it's like, that's the mental load that I don't want to carry on my own. Like, why should I? So and he, again, I think some of the people I've had on the podcast and some of the conversations we've had, he's learnt loads from as well. We both have. And it's not always a case of, a man's at fault and a woman is just hard done by. It's like, you also step into that role, or they step into that traditional role, and you can't help it always, but it's almost like recognizing it and being able to finding the right conversation, the right words to be able to have the conversation, which I think that's where people who are talking about it and are educating about it comes in really handy. Because otherwise, and for years, it was just me going, I'm doing everything, and he's like going, well, I don't feel like you are, and then you just get nowhere. So it needs to be something that you kind of both educate yourselves on, I think.
No, that's really good advice as well. And no, thank you, Steph. I've really enjoyed our chat, because I know we clearly agree on a lot of things, and it's inspiring to talk to someone who's been running their business for so long and around 3 children. Is there anything you can share about what's next for you and Don't Buy Her Flowers?
Yeah, we're looking at raising investment at the moment, which we've never done. So we've always funded ourselves. So it's exciting. It's a whole other language. So I'm learning a lot all the time. And we've got lots of kind of conversations going on about what next. Lots of big B2B customers who are looking for kind of a bigger, more regular gifting with like customer retention or employee engagement stuff. So lots going on. And I think for anyone in retail at the moment, it's just really tough. Like, it's a really tough environment. So it's navigating that, I think, is this year. I think that's what lots of people will be doing. And I'm sure you follow loads of independent businesses on social media, and you just see them folding at the moment. Like, every week there'll be, and it's ones that you're like, they've been around for ages, or they raised money last year, like, what's happened? So it is
they had
difficult.
A great business. So and that's it. And or they've been aspiring for other businesses as well. It's
so it is and it also just off the back of COVID and just everything. It's like there's no predictability to business, it feels like, at the moment, and that makes it quite hard. But I know, like, from talking to our customers and our retention rate for customers and all that stuff, it's really positive. And people like you, like, coming to us for gifting, and then there's such a scale of different types of business that we're working with, that you kind of like, right, there's still something in this. We're not done yet.
No, definitely not.
No.
Oh no. Well, thank you for sharing. I really look forward to hearing more. Perhaps I'm really interested in fundraising and women fundraising. So perhaps another conversation to have another time once you're through the
Well,
rounds and things. So, but
okay.
thank you so much, Steph. Where can people find you and Don't Buy Her Flowers?
So I Instagram on Steph underscore don't buy her flowers, and all the don't buy her flowers across everything is where I am.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.